Pam Bondi, White House advisor on impeachment. Pam, good morning to you. Thank you for being here.
Good morning.
So,
good morning.
How is the White House responding to what was 3 long days of this impeachment process in those hearings this week?
Well, it was a bunch of nothing, and it was a sham. And, you know, Sandra, we say that, but let me explain why. President Trump, then candidate Trump, has always run on a strong platform of anti-corruption, not only domestically, but also abroad. And we all know that Ukraine had incredible corruption. We get President Zelensky elected. He promised he was going to be an anti-corruption president, but he was untested. Parliament wasn't even seated until later, much later. So we had to see what President Zelensky was going to do. What did he do? He came in and started fulfilling those promises. He got rid of the prosecutor general, put a good one in place. He got rid of the immunity that Parliament was given, and he continued to do good things and start proving himself. At the same time, what are we doing? We're in reported widely talks with the Taliban on peace talks that eventually broke down, handling many, many world events. President Trump said there was no quid pro quo. President Zelensky said he was not pressured. In fact, an investigation was never even opened, and $400 million in relief, lethal aid, not only just blanket aid, what President Obama did, but lethal aid was given to the Ukraine. That's it. That's the end of story.
Okay, Pam, let's go through a few things. This meeting at the White House yesterday, did you attend that meeting where the senators came down?
It's been reported, yes, I was in the meeting, but I'm not going to talk about any specifics that happened in the meeting with the senators.
So what the president said earlier today is that I want a trial. Now, he said in the same answer they should never, ever impeach, but what can you tell us about his desire to have a trial if he believes it ultimately clears him? Or why would he make that comment or welcome that?
Well, the president, of course, he wants a trial because we've been in a sham court. You know, weeks of private testimony is how all this started in a bunker where Republicans weren't even allowed in the door. That's how this gets started. Then they cherry pick certain parts of testimony to put in the public hearing only after they were pressured by Congress to do so. And the president has not even been afforded any rights. You know, they're saying come in here and prove your innocence. That's outrageous in the world in which we live that this is happening. So, of course, the president wants to hear from Adam Schiff. After everything he did, he should be very nervous. Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, all these people, Burisma, the corporation, all of these people to show President Trump did nothing wrong. He's very adamant about that. We're very adamant about that. There is nothing there.
So how do you prepare for it? How do you prepare for it, though, Pam? Because obviously what you're doing is you're telling us that you're preparing for a trial. You're not giving us specifics of the meeting yesterday, but Fox News has learned that the House Judiciary could drop 4 articles of impeachment as soon as early next month. You have to prepare for that. What is the White House doing right now to do that?
Well, you know, it's pretty easy when the president's innocent. The president did nothing wrong. And Sandra, I'm glad you brought that up because you said earlier bribery. Bribery, first of all, bribery doesn't even apply here. That's not the definition of bribery. But what was it before? They changed the term because they used a focus group. The Democrats used a focus group, and quid pro quo didn't poll well. Bribery sounded better. It sounded tougher, so now they switched to bribery. This is outrageous in our country that this is happening to a sitting president.
A specific question,
really
Pam,
is.
on Ambassador Sondland. Take you back to the testimony of yesterday. This is David Holmes now on Sondland and the Trump call in Kiev.
In particular, I asked Ambassador Sondland if it was true that the president did not give an expletive about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland agreed that the president did not give an expletive about Ukraine. I asked why not. And Ambassador Sondland stated that the president only cares about big stuff. I noted there was big stuff going on in Ukraine, like a war with Russia. And Ambassador Sondland replied that he meant big stuff that benefits the president, like the Biden investigation that Mr. Giuliani was pushing.
I want to ask you about that. And also what Sondland said the day prior was that there was quid pro quo as it related to a meeting, not aid, but as a meeting at the White House. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, that's his opinion. And the guy that you just heard testify, is saying he eavesdropped on a phone call that Sondland had in a restaurant overseas, a very short phone call with the President of the United States. So it's hearsay upon hearsay upon hearsay. He's hearing things. Sondland testified about that. What did Sondland say ultimately? Sondland said, the president said, I don't want anything. There is no quid pro quo. What does our president want? What I started off with today. He wants to fight corruption, not only here, but abroad. Before we release money to the Ukraine, did you know we have to certify that it's not going for corruption, that it's not going to corrupt places?
One of the questions was, what was Rudy Giuliani's involvement there? Because we heard one of the witnesses yesterday say that Sondland, Ambassador Sondland, was doing a political errand for the president. Sondland testified that he was carrying out orders from the president and Rudy Giuliani. So this was put to the president this morning on that interview on Fox about Rudy Giuliani and his involvement in all those dealings in Ukraine. And here was his response.
Rudy Giuliani is a very legendary figure in our country. Rudy was the U.S. attorney. He also worked at the Justice Department. Believe me, this kind of crap wouldn't have happened in the Justice Department if Rudy Giuliani was the Attorney General, just like I believe Bill Barr will straighten it out. When you're dealing with a corrupt country, if Rudy Giuliani, he's got credentials because of his reputation. When Rudy Giuliani goes there and you hear it's a corrupt country, I mean, it means a lot.
So, Pam, what was his role there, Rudy Giuliani?
Well, Rudy Giuliani, we know, is the president's personal attorney.
Right.
The president just spoke to that issue. You know, there is corruption. Rudy Giuliani was your U.S. attorney in New York, and he was one of the toughest U.S. attorneys fighting corruption and in our country and out of our country. And Rudy is the president's personal attorney.
What was his involvement in Ukraine policy?
The president just spoke to that. He's his personal attorney. The president of the United States runs foreign policy. And by the way, going back to Sondland, he kept saying, I presume, I assume, I think
Pam,
this.
But some people hear you answering that he's the president's personal attorney. But the question was, what was his involvement in U.S.-Ukraine foreign policy?
The president of the United States sets foreign policy, not Sondland, not anyone else. There were career officials out there who did not like the president's tough stance. The president campaigned on this. The president will continue to fight corruption. This is coming from the president of the United States, that he is against corruption domestically and abroad, from candidate Trump, even before he was elected. And you know what? If he didn't do that, he wouldn't be doing his job. It's his duty to fight corruption, especially if we're going to give $400 million of lethal aid, not just blanket aid, lethal aid to the Ukraine. We had to be sure that that president, Zelensky, who's proven himself now to be a pretty darn good president, he's fighting corruption within the Ukraine, before we release that money to the country. It's that simple.
Okay.
That's all that happened. We have the president saying there was no quid pro quo, and Zelensky saying that. And it's ridiculous that it has gone this far, and it continues on and on. And now, because of a focus group, they're going to charge the president of the United States of America with bribery, which doesn't even apply
We have
here.
1 minute left, two topics. What about the IG report? What light can you shed on that and what you're hearing?
Well, we all know it's coming out December 9th, and the president spoke to that. I know the president is very interested in what's going to be found in that report. We are, the American people are. I know all of you are. And we're hearing it's very lengthy, and it's coming out December 9th. We're not going to get ahead of it, but I know I can't wait to read what's in it, nor can the president of the United States.
Last point here. If Democrats go with censure, how does the White House and the president react on that?
Excuse me?
If they go for censure as opposed to articles of impeachment.
You know, we're going to handle that as it comes. We're not worried about anything. We're going to see what they do. It's going to be interesting, but we're not going to get ahead of any of that.
Pam Bondi, thank you for your time in Washington today.
Thank you, Pam.
Come on back.
Thank you.
You bet.